I've had people walk out on me before, but not when I was being so charming. I'm in a bar here now, down in the 4th sector. Taffy Lewis is on the line. Why don't you come on down here and have a drink?
I don't think so, Mr. Deckard. That's not my kind of place.
Go someplace else.
Blade Runner continues after news at 10.
The Monday night adventure with Lynx.
Relationships seem to be improving for some.
You're up a doodah, what's it?
What you want about?
Although not for others.
It's Bambo. He wants to know if you can give him a what's it.
Oh, well, tell him I'll be right over.
Light bulb.
Oh.
But personal matters can't get in the way of the job.
We collect the pallets, bring them here, stack them to the roof.
There's something here. What's it?
Will love conquer all, or is it just a storm in a tea chest? A very moving story. Tuesday at 9 on Central.
It's boom time in the Big Apple.
You are about to have a very bad day.
Tell me about it.
Bruce Willis, Jeremy Irons, and Samuel L. Jackson in a John McTiernan film. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
This one here. This one.
This one.
This one.
This?
This one.
This one.
This one.
We've got to teach it at first.
This one's the best.
I like this one the best.
I like this one.
I prefer this one.
That one.
Probably that one.
This one here.
My left hand. That one.
This one.
Thank you, I'm very disappointed.
I knew it was this one.
Cheers.
Just make your mind up, time.
I like this one, but I think Alison likes this one. I prefer this one.
Have a cool break. Have a new Kit Kat ice cream.
Makes a refreshing change.
Woodpecker, what a refreshing change.
Jeez, look at that driving.
He's probably rushing to the video shop to get an interview with a vampire.
Hey, slow down, buddy. We've got 28,000 copies of the film at Blockbuster Video. Benny, do you think I'm pretty?
Blockbuster Video, the entertainment team. Central is bringing you new quality drama.
Thank you.
Central is bringing you new stories from returning favorites. Central is bringing you the big names.
Looks like mouse.
Detective Chief Inspector Morse.
With drama this good, everyone wants to be a part of it.
Come back and take my picture!
Central is drama. Now on Central, the news at 10.
From ITN News at 10 with Julia Somerville.
Deadline for the Kashmir hostages. India refuses to negotiate. Safety on the railways. A top manager warns of disaster. Mortgage debt couple win the right to sell their house. And police hunt the killer of a 15-year-old girl. Good evening. Time appears to be running out tonight for the two Britons, the American and the German, still held hostage by separatist guerrillas in Kashmir. The guerrillas from the Al-Faran group have already decapitated a Norwegian and threatened to kill the other hostages 5 hours from now if India didn't free jailed militants. India tonight appeared to rule that out. The kidnapping has been condemned by the United Nations Security Council, Pakistan and even other Kashmiri separatists. But the Foreign Office described the outlook for the hostages as grim. Ian Glover-James reports.
Somewhere in these remote mountains, swept by Indian patrols, 2 British hostages are fighting to stay alive. Army helicopters last month spotted 1 hostage down below, landed and rescued him. With just hours to go before the kidnappers' deadline to kill the rest, it remains the only time the Indians got close to the Kashmiri terrorists. 2 of the last hostages are Britons, and there are growing fears for their health and now for their lives. Paul Wells, a 23-year-old student, and Keith Mangan, a 33-year-old electrician, are now being held with an American and a German. Keith Mangan appears already injured in this shot released earlier by the kidnappers. The British ambassador working flat out with diplomats representing other hostages, in session with India's Home Affairs Minister, redoubling our efforts, they say, to free the British captives. This is what's brought it to a head. The flower-draped coffin of the murdered Norwegian hostage, watched by relatives and Norwegian officials. Indian officers in dress uniform escort it off the plane from Srinagar. A post-mortem soon confirmed the worst. Hans Christian Ostro was beheaded by his captors while still alive, but emaciated and in terrible health after 5 weeks in captivity. He was already desperate. A note in his pocket read, "I'm dying. There's nothing to eat. There's nothing to live for." For the Indian Army seem as powerless to find the kidnappers as they are to bring peace to Kashmir. The partition of British India 48 years ago left Kashmir stranded. Mainly Muslim but Hindu-ruled, its borders have been disputed ever since. Armed separatists now want to end Indian rule. The struggles cost 12,000 lives. India's now fighting death threats to Westerners too.
Brutal and barbaric terrorism. If we give in to them now, we give in the cause of civilization.
Tonight, the Foreign Office say Britain's making considerable efforts to end the Kashmir kidnap crisis. Officials say talks with the Indian authorities are still going on, and Britain's primary concern is the hostages' safety. Ian Glover-James, News at 10 at the Foreign Office.
Here, Railtrack has been defending its safety record against a leaked memo from one of its own senior managers. The memo warned Railtrack that its safety procedures and staff training were inadequate. It said there'd been 2 near misses in the southeast alone, which could have turned out like the Clapham disaster of 1988. Our business editor Mark Webster reports.
This was the scene of one of 2 near misses recorded in the memo. It says passengers only escaped injury in a collision because the train was of a modern design. If it hadn't been, it says the side could have been ripped away with disastrous consequences. Didn't that raise legitimate concerns about Railtrack's safety record?
They were near misses, they were not accidents.
Well, near misses surely will give the public grave concern.
We have to look at the frequency of such incidents. And
well, 2 near misses, surely the public is as right to be concerned about your safety record.
The public do have a right to be concerned about our safety record. If you look at the trends over the last 3 years, you'll see that the safety record has improved considerably.
Since the Clapham rail disaster in December '88, which claimed 35 lives, Railtrack says there's been a huge improvement in safety. That accident was blamed on management failing to ensure that wiring to a signal light had been checked. But have the railways become any safer since Clapham? The number of collisions has more than halved, from nearly 300 to 135 last year. And the number of passengers killed has fallen too, but only markedly last year, when 14 people died, compared to around 30 a year in the 80s. Despite that improvement, this memo's been seized on by both Labour and the Liberal Democrats, as evidence, they say, of what will happen in the run-up to and after the privatisation of the railways. This certainly is embarrassing for Railtrack and does put a question mark over the sell-off. While the government wants to move ahead as quickly as possible, potential investors will want comprehensive guarantees on safety. The memo says it would take up to 18 months to put matters right, but Railtrack says since it was written 2 months ago, the Health and Safety Executive has given it a clean bill of health. The author of the memo, Senior Railtrack Manager Jack Rose, was not at his home and wasn't giving a comment, but others said his criticisms were valid.
When we have a senior Railtrack manager responsible for safety assessment saying that there are major gaps that there are major problems in the safety systems. We cannot have that just brushed aside.
Yet a system to stop trains going through red lights, the automatic train protection system, was abandoned in March as too costly. In the run-up to privatisation, the controversy over how safe the railways really are is bound to intensify. Mark Webster, News at 10, Rail Track.
An inquest opened today on 5 people killed in a head-on train crash on a single-track stretch of line in Kent last October. The inquest heard that the crash at Cowden happened after a driver ignored 4 warning signals and overrode an automatic brake. A BR workman said he'd seen the guard inside the driver's cab, but it was unclear who'd been driving at the time of the crash. Last week, Serbs were being driven out of Croatia into Bosnia. Today, the Serbs got their revenge, and it was Croats who were being forced in their turn out of a Serb-held part of Bosnia into Croatia. Hundreds of women, children and old men from the Banja Luka area were taking the ferry across the Sava River to the Croatian village of Dvor. Our diplomatic editor James Mates reports from Croatia.
The seemingly endless cycle of expulsions and ethnic cleansing goes on, but this time it's the turn of the Croats to be driven from their homes. 600 people a day are crossing this river in flimsy boats, coming over into the safety of Croatia after being ordered out of the Serb-held town of Banja Luka. But as buses brought more refugees to the far bank, it became clear that the Serbs were refusing to allow men under 45 to make the crossing, a development the United Nations described as sinister. Many Croats had come to the border to greet relations and friends. Often they hadn't seen them for 3 years. But there was no question of these people having left voluntarily. We were forced out by the Serbs, said this man. They came into my house and kicked me out. For 60 years I've worked, and this is all I've got left. They threw us all out, agreed this woman. Not just me, all of us. The UN and the aid agencies could do little but try and help the worst off and express their disgust at what's happening.
In a matter of days, we also expect a mass expulsion of the remaining Muslim population, and then Banja Luka will achieve the barbaric goal of ethnic purity.
But it isn't just the Serbs. These pictures taken by the UN show how Croatian troops have been burning Serb houses in the town of Knin. The town was captured in a lightning offensive 2 weeks ago, and it's quite clear the Serb population will never be welcomed back. The United Nations believes more civilians are on the move now than at any time since this Yugoslav war began 4 years ago. Populations who for centuries lived together are now being brutally and systematically separated along lines of religion and nationality. James Mates, News at 10, Croatia.
A girl of 15 was found murdered today in a wheat field in Wigan, Greater Manchester. She'd been battered about the head and strangled. A search started after Louise Sellers failed to return home last night, but her body was found by chance by a retired policeman walking his dog. Our North of England correspondent Steve Scott reports from Wigan.
By day, a popular path for walkers. By night, a renowned lover's lane. Now, the centre of a murder investigation. 15-year-old Louise Sellers' body was discovered this morning by a man exercising his dog. Still fully clothed, she'd been strangled and hit repeatedly about the head. Louise was last seen alive at a bus stop near her home at 9 o'clock last night, when she said goodbye to a friend she'd spent the evening with. Detectives say at this early stage they've yet to establish whether Louise was murdered where she was found, or whether she was killed elsewhere and then brought here. For that reason, they say, any further sightings of her after 9 o'clock last night are crucial to their investigation. Her parents reported her missing at midnight when she failed to come home.
They're understandably devastated, absolutely devastated. We've got specially trained bereavement counsellors from the police service with them at the moment.
Louise's close friends are stunned.
She was lively, bubbling, pretty. She always had something to tell you. She was doing something.
A keen horse rider, Louise had been at her local stables just a few hours before she vanished.
She's been very upset and everything. We've all been upset. There's a lot of us been crying and that.
3 years ago, a 25-year-old woman was murdered near the same spot. The man responsible was caught and sentenced. Forensic teams have continued their searching well into this evening, looking for a weapon looking for any clue that may be hidden in the countryside around, which could lead them closer to the killer. Steve Scott, News at 10, Billinge, near Wigan.
A couple who couldn't keep up their mortgage repayments and now owe more than their house is worth won a High Court ruling today against the Halifax Building Society. The judge said they could sell the house themselves, rather than see it repossessed and put on the market by the Halifax. Robert Hall reports.
They were caught in a trap shared by over 1.5 million homeowners. Today, Edward and Doreen Barrett fought for the right to sell their terraced home themselves. The High Court heard that the Barretts faced repossession after failing to keep up mortgage payments. The Halifax Building Society had insisted it should sell the property on. In court, the Barretts' legal team argued that if the couple lost their buyer and had to give up possession, the Halifax wouldn't get such a good deal under a forced sale. The judge agreed, and he granted a court order allowing the Barretts to sell the house themselves at a price which valuers have claimed is the best they could get in the present market. The Barretts' solicitor said they were delighted with the decision, which he believed had wider implications for victims of negative equity.
They're very pleased, yes. As far as they're concerned, they've reduced their ultimate liability, and they also have tried to behave honourably with their lender, and they see the lender getting back more than would otherwise be the case.
But others have tonight cautioned against euphoria amongst homeowners, the Halifax refuting talk of a victory. In a brief statement, it said, "There will still be a shortfall to pay to the Building Society. It is not a way out."
This decision could mean that people can sell properties themselves, and then they can get a better value for the property than if it's sold through auction by the Building Society. But we'd like to see other measures taken as well. For example, we'd like the proposed cuts to mortgage interest benefit to be withdrawn by the government.
The Barretts will still owe around £80,000, but they hope the ruling may force lenders to review their policy.
Still to come on News at 10, further water restrictions in the pipeline as summer marches on. Britain's oldest colony prepares to vote in the path of a hurricane.
I'll be explaining how the decisive vote in Bermuda's independence referendum is being cast by Hurricane Felix.
And in pursuit of the great outdoors, the ramblers who won't allow anything to block their path.
I would have thought that they would have done their homework and have found that there was a footpath going through the site.
Listen carefully. You're about to hear something you won't hear very often. The Rover 600 series. Cars built this well are few and far between.
Back in 1835, NPI started out helping a few people put something by for the future. Our reputation spread. Now, 160 years on, with assets of over £7 billion, pensions are still our speciality. Because at NPI, we think the fundamental things apply. As time goes by, you'll be glad you chose NPI.
Play Esso Drive Time and you could win one of millions of prizes. In fact, anything from free weekend breaks to travel offers to one of 10 Lotus Esprits. And put your life in the fast lane.
Orange know how frustrating it is to be out of touch. So if your Orange phone breaks down, it'll be replaced wherever you are within 24 hours, free of charge. The future's bright. The future's Orange. Call 0800 286 286.
Hey, listen, Colgate Total keeps on protecting you, even after you finish brushing. Colgate Total's antibacterial protection helps fight against plaque and cavities while you're working, and even against tartar and gum problems while you're enjoying yourself. Colgate Total. Brushing that works between brushings.
Whatever the occasion, settlers' towns settle towns.
All that bubbles isn't necessarily champagne. Not every salmon comes from Scotland. But only one wholemeal bread is raised the Hovis way. Yes, it's Hovis. Yes, it's wholemeal. And yes, I do enjoy doing these commercials.
Welcome back. Yorkshire Water was today bringing standpipes out of store, and some people could be depending on them for water in the next few days. With another week of hot, dry weather forecast, more English water companies are now planning restrictions. Some reservoirs are as low as they've been for nearly 2 decades. Our science editor Lawrence McGinty reports.
The harvest is well and truly on, but for some farmers, Britain's near drought weather is doing no good at all. On this farm in the Cambridgeshire borders, the yield of the bean crop is down by 30%.
The pods have not developed, they've shriveled in the drought. Yield reductions, I think it's on a par with 1976. It's certainly the worst we've had since then.
Levels in some of Britain's reservoirs are as low as salaries used to be for water company executives. The villages flooded to make reservoirs are already beginning to reappear. It's looking as bad as the drought of 1976. And the water companies are beginning to impose restrictions on how we use their product. So far, 6 companies have imposed hosepipe or sprinkler bans: Southern, South West, Yorkshire, Mid-Kent, Mid-Southern and North Surrey. That affects 4 million people, and tomorrow North West Water could impose a ban hitting 7 million more. But are things really as bad as 9 years ago?
In 1976, 100% of the domestic dwellings in England and Wales had restrictions on their water supply. This year so far, in spite of it being the driest summer and the hottest summer for over 100 years, only 5% of dwellings are interrupted from water supply.
Nevertheless, in Yorkshire, the standpipes are ready. Labour says it's all because the industry hasn't controlled leaks from its own pipes. The government says £4 billion has been spent securing water supplies, but people are just wasting water through hose pipes.
There's speculation tonight that the Northern Ireland Secretary, Sir Patrick Mayhew, will be meeting the Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams again within the next fortnight. Mr Adams said today that his remark yesterday about the IRA not having gone away wasn't intended as a threat. Dublin said he should have been more careful. Our Ireland correspondent Tom Bradby reports.
It doesn't happen often, but Gerry Adams appears to have been caught off guard yesterday when he warned that the IRA was still around. Today he said it wasn't meant as a threat.
We are seeking agreement. We're not threatening the unionists. We're seeking agreement. We're seeking, on the basis of equality, a facility whereby the British government fulfills its responsibilities, the rest of us fulfill our responsibilities, and we try to work out a shared future for the people of this island. That's the big threat.
Mr Adams made the remark at a rally in the centre of Belfast. He was addressing a crowd of Republicans, many of whom feel the British government has been dragging its feet over the peace process. Somebody shouted, "Bring back the IRA."
Bring back the IRA!
They haven't gone away, you know.
The provisional IRA were never serious about creating peace. Their movement was simply in the business of trying to extract concessions from the government. They were as willing to do that through a ceasefire as they were through violence.
It is hard to imagine the peace process breaking down before President Clinton's visit here in early December. But the truth is, of course, that the IRA hasn't disbanded, and it will be used if Republican strategists decide that is to their advantage. The danger for them is that any resumption in IRA violence could shatter the nationalist alliance that's taken so long to build. Tom Bradby, News at 10 in Belfast.
The boxer Chris Eubank has been fined £5,000 and severely reprimanded for telling his next opponent he would lose his life. Eubank made the remarks during the build-up to his world title fight with the Irishman Steve Collins next month. Eric Cantona was back in England today after a week of uncertainty about his future. The Manchester United player was back for a team training session, but is still banned from playing until the beginning of October. And the fifth test between England and the West Indies at Trent Bridge ended in a draw. Mike Watkinson hit an unbeaten 82, helping England to declare on 267 for 9 in their second innings, leaving the West Indies needing 293 to win. They finished on 42 for 2. A referendum on independence is going ahead tomorrow in Bermuda, Britain's oldest crown colony, despite an approaching hurricane. People from the coast are already moving inland, but the government says the referendum can't be put off. It could be very close, but Bermuda's 53,000 people, about 60% black, 40 white, are expected to vote to stay British. Bermuda, in calm weather a paradise, is in the Atlantic, about 570 miles off the coast of South Carolina. Our correspondent Jonathan Munro is there and sent this special report.
With extraordinary timing, Hurricane Felix is heading for Bermuda. Its full force will hit tomorrow, the very day Bermudians are due to vote on their independence.
They're bound to sustain some damage, and could be considerable.
Damage or not, the powers that be here say the vote is enshrined in law and goes ahead.
As far as I'm concerned, we have an act. We have proceeded according to the act. And the referendum is on.
Sir John has led the campaign for independence.
Grant us your divine wisdom.
Some of his followers have prayed for it.
Amen.
Who wouldn't want to be independent? You're independent. Your country's independent, right? Obviously.
The United Kingdom is becoming more and more closer to Europe, and we really belong to North America.
In calmer times, Bermuda thrives on being a pearl in the ocean, the most affluent island on Earth. For nearly 4 centuries, it has been a very small piece of Britain, just 600 miles from Florida. Its population the size of a small town, now considering whether to go it alone. The majority of Bermudians enjoy the taste of the good life. If it ain't bust, they say, why fix it?
I just don't agree with independence, full stop. We'll have problems trying to make our way in the world, I think. Yeah, big problems.
To think that we have any influence over world politics is just, you know, some sort of dictator's dream. I mean, it's quite ridiculous to my mind.
Bermuda's built on its money, a major centre for banking and insurance. To some here, the Britishness is a selling point for business. To others, an outdated relic of an empire long gone. The British themselves are staying neutral.
We didn't fight a war in the Falklands to say to people who wish to maintain the British connection, I'm sorry, times have moved on and you can all push off. The British government's attitude is that if people want to maintain this connection, they're entitled to do so.
If the independence lobby loses, which seems likely, there'll be a new premier, possibly the man they call the voice of summer.
Right arm over the wicket to the right hand of David Stern.
This cricket commentator is also the island's tourism minister and one of the few prominent blacks against a Bermudian breakaway.
I can't be any more Bermudian than I am now. Will the new flag and the national anthem make me any more Bermudian than I am now? I have a sense of pride in having been fortunate to be born in the most beautiful place in the world, and I'm already Bermudian.
For the moment, however, hurricane has stopped play. Preparations, not politics, are the talk of the hour, and Felix has already begun to batter Bermuda.
So after months of campaigning, it's Hurricane Felix which is casting the most decisive vote on this referendum. Bermudians who are expecting to spend tomorrow turning up at the ballot box will instead be clearing up the mess.
It's a clear-up that's already started before the strongest winds have even reached here. Jonathan Munro, News at 10, Bermuda.
A reminder of the main news again. India says it won't negotiate with the Kashmiri militants threatening to kill 2 Britons, a German and an American tonight. And finally, ramblers have been beating a path to the front door of a house just built in Wiltshire, and they've not been stopping there. They've been going through the hallway and out of the back door because the house was built over an old right-of-way. Our West of England reporter James Bayes has the whole story.
It looks like any of the other semis on a new out-of-town housing estate. A young couple bought number 91 a few months ago. It seemed the ideal starter home, lying in the shadow of Wiltshire's famous chalk carving of the White Horse. However, the company that built this house were today told to open it to the public because it blocks a right-of-way. The council says that local ramblers should be allowed to use a footpath, which goes from a main road, through the kitchen, then through the front room of the house, and out the other side of the building.
I think it's ridiculous that they've built a house over a public footpath and we've had to walk right through that house to get to the other side.
I think it's a very poor show on the part of the builders. I would have thought that they would have done their homework and have found that there was a footpath going through the site.
The people who bought this house months ago have been unable to move in because of the row. They're now hoping that locals don't object to the footpath being moved, otherwise the building might have to be knocked down.
We have powers to remove the obstruction of the right-of-way. That doesn't necessarily mean the whole house. It means the bit across the right-of-way.
The council will decide at the end of the week whether that right-of-way should continue to go right through this house. James Bayes, News at 10, Westbury in Wiltshire.
Well, I trust we've also kept to the straight and narrow tonight. Good night.
Hello, good evening. Well, it looks like we've got more of the same sort of dry, sunny weather for the rest of the week. Now, that's good news if you're enjoying the sunshine, but for farmers or gardeners, bad news if you're badly in need of rain. Now, if we look at the Atlantic satellite picture, you can see here we've had broken cloud over much of the country this afternoon, but out to the west here, lots of clear blue sky. Now, that's being caused by this area of high pressure close to us at the moment. That's sending out the dry, sunny weather for us in Europe. Further north, though, we have got more cloud about, nearer to this low pressure. But if we look at the end of the week, that high pressure is just getting nearer to us, and that means more of the same dry, sunny and warm weather. In fact, temperatures getting even warmer. So tomorrow morning then, the mist clearing away, and we've got what's turning into a nice, bright, sunny afternoon, especially sunny out here to the east. Now, very much like today, we've got more cloud building up further north and west, and that means some more patchy drizzle about. That's particularly going to be the case along the Irish Sea coasts and right up to the Hebrides. That's also where it's going to feel a bit cooler tomorrow as well. There's quite a blustery wind about for the north. Now, the heights there, about 22 Celsius, but once again for the southeast, much warmer. We're looking at 26 Celsius, that's 79 in Fahrenheit. That's all from me for tonight. Good night.
Sponsored by PowerGen, producing electricity, whatever the weather.
If you're looking for a competitive personal leasing scheme, look no further than Rover Personal Contract Hire. It's available across the range, and it boasts a very reassuring feature. Subject to certain conditions, if there's a major change in your financial circumstances, you can simply return your car to your dealer without paying any penalty.
When I was Jack the lad, shredded wheat helped give me what I needed. But now I'm Jack the man, I understand why. Shredded wheat is no added salt and no added sugar, because it's only made with 100% whole wheat. Shredded wheat's the only one for me. Hey, I like to keep the best players for my team. Nestle shredded wheat and bite-sized too.
And now there's new shredded wheat fruitful. Delicious cereal, lightly sweetened and bursting with real fruit. New shredded wheat fruitful. It's deliciously fruitful.
Whatever happened to the Great Iceland giveaway?
It's back. For 3 weeks only, you get 2 garlic baguettes worth $1.25 absolutely free when you buy lasagna at the Great Iceland giveaway.
Get ready to rock. It's the #1 70s rock album. 40 killer cuts from the most dynamic decade of them all. Hendrix, Queen, The Faces, T-Rex, Meatloaf, Dire Straits. They're all on the #1 70s rock album. A great value double album of hits.
Now there's a completely new dimension to achieving healthy and beautiful skin. Nivea Visage Optimal. A unique and exclusive formula delivering rapid and continuous moisturization, and it's vitamin-enriched. Nivea Visage Optimal provides long-lasting moisturization all day long, day after day. Exclusively from Nivea Visage.
Body Form Invisible. Ultra thin. Ultra reliable. Less is most definitely more.
Step it up. 2, 3, 4, 5.
Why buy a step? I've got 14 steps right here. And another thing, why pay more for your washing powder when Radiant tackles stains and gets clothes brilliantly clean and fresh? And the moral of the story is, why stretch yourself if you don't have to? Radiant, hard on stains, soft on pockets.
When teeth are sensitive, it hurts right to the very center of the tooth. With regular daily use, Sensodyne F's advanced formula quickly and effectively calms the nerves that cause pain. Use fresh-tasting Sensodyne F every day, proven to relieve the pain of sensitive teeth.
From a museum in Los Angeles to the muscles of a Lamborghini, that's the Motor Show on Central at 11:50 tonight.
Good evening. Now the late news from Central. Millions of people face hosepipe bans as the water shortage worsens. Severn Trent says it believes a ban over much of the Midlands is imminent. It says some customers are persistently defying advice to conserve water supplies, and the situation is now critical.
The level of water at Berkeley Reservoir in Birmingham is now officially at a critically low level, about a quarter of what it should be. Berkeley and nearby Frankley reservoirs supply 1.2 million households in Birmingham, but those customers are taking more out of Berkeley than's going in, to the tune of about 20 million gallons a day. Severn Trent says that's a situation that can't continue.
The demand is still very high. We've had very little rain, if any, over a long period of time. And as a result, reservoir storage is getting at a critical level.
The main problem, says Severn Trent, are hose pipes and sprinklers. One can use enough water in an hour to supply a family of 4 for 2 days. Meanwhile, the drought is thought to be responsible for the death of at least 4 ducks at a park in Moseley in Birmingham. The high temperatures are believed to have contaminated the water in their pool. Fire officers have been called in to rescue birds in distress.
The parents of a man killed in a street attack are fighting for access to his baby daughter. They're threatening legal action over the baby row. If there's no agreement, they'll take the child's mother to court.
Kathleen Vinicum, still grieving the loss of her son, now fears she'll never be able to see her granddaughter. Her son, Kevin Booton, was stabbed to death in West Bromwich in February. His girlfriend, Katie Rowlands, was pregnant. 2 weeks ago, she gave birth to Danielle. Mrs. Vinicum from Smethwick says she's been told she cannot have access to her granddaughter.
Well, it's my son's daughter, and I need to see her.
Right. What does this mean to you?
A lot.
She says if she's not promised access within 2 weeks, she'll go to court. Katie from Edgbaston in Birmingham told Central News that she and her family had no comment to make. Her solicitor said the more it escalated, the worse it would become for her.
A male nurse has died after being run over by a hit-and-run driver during a street fight. Police say he'd been quarrelling with a man who was a close friend. The friend is now said to be devastated. A report's being prepared for the Crown Prosecution Service to decide if he'll face any charges.
The fight happened outside Moseley Rugby Club in Birmingham. Christopher Rogers fell into the road. He was then run over by a driver who failed to stop. Detectives say he'd been fighting with a close friend. He's now deeply upset by what happened.
I think the correct word to use would be devastated. In fact, we did try to seek to obtain him treatment prior to any interviews that we had with him in relation to the incident.
And did he see his friend run over?
I understand that is yes.
Mr. Rogers was a staff nurse at All Saints Hospital in Birmingham, and today he was going to be promoted.
We really find it very difficult to accept that he'd been involved in any sort of a fight, because he's very much the sort of person with his training and his background and personality to be able to walk away from trouble.
Police are still searching for the hit-and-run driver. They say he might not have realised he'd run over Mr. Rogers.
Police are looking for 2 men after the death of a man in Birmingham. They were called to a dispute in the Woodgate Valley area. Wilfred Brown, who was in his 50s, was found collapsed on the ground and later died in hospital from heart failure. Police want to speak to 2 men, both in their mid-20s. A man's been charged with the murder of an 18-year-old soldier. He's due to appear before magistrates tomorrow. Private Andrew Green was stabbed repeatedly as he was walking home in the Black Country yesterday morning. Neighbours trying to rescue a 2-year-old girl who died in a fire say they were beaten back by the flames. The blaze gutted the house in Derby minutes after it started. 2 adults and another child escaped by breaking a window and jumping out. An investigation into the cause of the house fire is continuing. Sport now, and just one football result tonight. Shrewsbury Town drew 1-1 away to Doncaster Rovers in the first round first leg of the Coca-Cola Cup. They went ahead in the 14th minute, but Doncaster equalised 6 minutes into the second half. And finally, a strange friendship sprang up between a tortoise and 3 baby hedgehogs. Torty and the orphans have become prickly pals. They're inseparable, eating, sleeping and playing together. 6 weeks ago, Torty was just an ordinary tortoise who lived like any other. He led a fairly solitary existence and ate normal tortoise food, like salad and vegetables. But now he's got 3 new friends, is into gourmet meals and thinks he's a hedgehog. Squeaky, Grumpy and Greedy were brought to a local animal sanctuary when they were just a day old. Their mother had been killed in an accident. They moved in with Torty and were hand-reared with 3 hourly feeds of goat's milk. Now they've graduated to dog food, which they share with their new friend.
How it came about was, you see, I didn't have anywhere to put the hedgehogs, and so I thought I could put them in with the tortoise. And then they started sleeping together and really being pally.
And they also eat the same food.
That's really pretty unusual, actually. The tortoise eating dog food the same and eating the meals together. It's really, really unusual. I think the tortoise doesn't realise that he is a tortoise, and now he's sort of acting like an hedgehog because he's sleeping with the hedgehogs.
Unfortunately, Torty's new lifestyle will come to an end when the baby hedgehogs can fend for themselves. He'll really miss his new friends, even if their table manners leave a lot to be desired. That's all for now. We'll be back as usual at 6:15 tomorrow morning. Do try and join us then, but from me, a very good evening.
Central Weather is sponsored by Andrews Air Conditioning Hire.
Hello again, good evening. Well, we can expect mostly clear skies overnight with temperatures settling around or just above average for August at 10 or 11 Celsius, that's the low 50s Fahrenheit, with some mist patches towards the Welsh borders by dawn. Elsewhere, though, it'll be another dry, bright start tomorrow with sunny spells. Throughout the afternoon, temperatures will be rising, so cloud will be bubbling up, but really most of us should see plenty of sunshine, certainly more than today. Some lengthy sunny spells, in fact, are likely, tops into the mid-20s Celsius, accompanied by a light breeze. On Wednesday, any early morning mist will clear quickly to give a fine sunny start with clear skies, very little wind, with temperatures into the high 20s Celsius, that's the low 80s, and by Thursday again, that high pressure will mean more sunshine. That's it from me for today. Bye-bye.
The Central 7-Day Weather Line, 0336 40 40 10.
On the trail of predators, living by the law of the jungle, survival of the fittest. But now the hunters have become the hunted, tracked down and captured on film. Exposed in all their glory. Predators, Wednesday Wildlife at 7 on Central.
The Golden Four, Match 2. And the best, the new champions, the ex-champions, and the ones with something to prove will be in Zurich. Because a win in their own event in each of the Golden Four matches will make them golden champions in more than just name. International Athletics, Match 2 of the Golden Four, live from Zurich, Wednesday at 8:30 on Central. Now on Central, back to our movie, Blade Runner.
The Monday night adventure with Lynx.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kathy Lewis presents Miss Helene and the Snake. Watch her take the pleasures from the serpent that once corrupted men.